Hello, I am Lunge the Dinosaur, speaking to you from an undisclosed location. I would like to read to you my latest speech concerning the present election of the President of the United States. The Queen of all corruption versus the Celebrity Apprentice, or the Whore of Babylon and the Beast. It's the end of the world as we know it. First, the darkness climbs all the way up to heaven and wounds all on the side of good. But when it wounds the last good person, it loses all support and crashes to the depths of the earth. Darkening of the light, wounding of the bright. 6 at the top means not light but darkness. First he climbs up to heaven, then plunges to the depths of the earth. Here the climax of darkening is reached. The dark plower at first held so high a place that it could wound all who were on the side of good and of the light. But in the end, it perishes of its own darkness. For evil must itself fall at the very moment when it has wholly overcome the good, and thus consumed the very energy to which it owed its duration. I like what Robert Reich said in the early days of this strange election. He said that Hillary represents the system we now have, and that Bernie represents the system we need to have now. I feel the same way. A shift is accelerating in our world between those who have held back the future for so long and those that can see the bright beginnings of a new and better future, forged out of the toxic rubble of our times. It is so obvious now that the institutions that govern the people have become obsolete in representing the enlightened will of a newly aware consciousness seeping into the people through the explosion of information, technology, and artistic inspiration flowing through the masses at this time. Yes, it has been building since the 1960s a creative, philosophical, and joyous new understanding of the living universe and our human place in it. But along with this great awakening have come the reaction to it by conservative forces. Forces that want to keep the money flowing into the same old blood-stained hands in the fossil fuel industry, the military, law enforcement, government, financial sector, international corporations, energy companies, medical and educational institutions, banking, and religion. The tension between the enlightened will of the people and the inability of the wealthy to release their stranglehold on the progression of the human race has been terribly murderous of late, killing off more and more people who dare to demand changes that are desperately needed to save the future of all life on the planet. We are experiencing a drastic die-off of epic proportions as life is being threatened by oil and pharmaceutical poison, heroin and alcohol and sugar, and tobacco and toxic pesticides, leaking energy pipelines, and exploding tar oil trains, nuclear contamination, fracking, earthquakes and water pollution, and anti-intellectualism. The politics of fear continue to appropriate the majority of our national productivity with massive military spending year after year after year, while the infrastructure crumbles and the national mental and physical health continues to degrade, causing terrible social problems as narcissistic rationalists in government destroy the social safety net for the poor and unemployed. Everywhere, lack of connection causes obsessive addictions, and isolation and loneliness cause more despair. Mass unemployment and underemployment bring homelessness and incarceration, starvation and suicide, gun violence, domestic abuses of all kinds, and ignorant and racist police stalk our streets, and nowhere is innocence protected or kindness and courtesy respected, as we all suffer from this unending, uncivil class war since November 22nd, 1963, when the wheels of progressive change were brought to a screeching halt by CIA murderers in Dealey Plaza in Texas one bright November afternoon. Then, in 2001, the wealthy attacked the security apparatus of the United States as they were about to uncover an international ring of super-rich businessmen who were plotting the financial takeover of the world. The ensuing war on terror, a war to end all peace, was then instituted, and America became the superpower empire by invading the sovereign nation of Iraq and deposing their dictator. Now we can see this march for oil and heroin, the world's largest cash crops in the Middle East, and the subjugation of the Palestinians and the Muslim countries where the oil hides beneath their sand, all the while encircling Iran in a sea of American military bases. Syria is now the new battleground where we can prepare the next stage in global domination, the destruction of our present systems through a world war to consume the third world and force a final confrontation between East and West to determine who will rule the world for the wealthy. The Chinese want to make a play for world domination, while the Western powers arrogantly believe they have the right to rule the world for the Western corporations that have designed the West to suit the needs of the wealthy families that believe they have the God-given right to rule over the masses for their own benefit. The divine right of kings, transferred to a new super aristocracy of bazillionaires, the divine right of wealth. And that's where we have the perfect politicians, the great front men and women for the corporations. Most politicians, but most notably in the presidential selection of Hillary Rodham Clinton and Donald J. Trump. If Hillary steals this election, she will be an adequate president, and she will do some small repair on the social fabric for those who are suffering in incremental steps, just like Obama has done. In fact, all the presidents have walked this thin line between the need of an increasingly desperate people and the unending bottomless pit of avarice of the rich and the powerful. In fear, some of them assassinated progressives, persecuted whistleblowers and witnesses, lied about the Gulf of Tonkin to wage war, covered up assassinations, instituted the war on drugs, introduced crack cocaine and AIDS, militarized police, busted the unions, enforced mass incarceration, concessions made to the administrators over the needs of doctors or nurses or professors or teachers, dismantling the oversight and prosecutions of the totally corrupt financiers, bankers, and the Federal Reserve gangsters, allowing toxic food, chemicals, alcohol, tobacco, sugar, insurance companies, financial manipulators, and speculators to ruin the economy, allowing polluters of all kinds and pharmaceuticals, over homeopathic and herbal medicines and techniques, and a long, long list growing every day of abuses and transgressions of their sacred duty to protect and serve the inalienable rights of free and equal citizens guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The heartless and fascist policies that have created this terrible situation will not be made any better by allowing the Demo Republicrats to continue to support these few people in the world today that care only for their stranglehold over the progression of the world to keep the floods of money flowing into only their hands. Wall Street and Walmart are well represented by Clinton, who runs as a woman and a populist in sympathy with Bernie Sanders supporters, but will govern like her folksy husband only for the vested interests of the establishment's corporate party and their super wealthy, powerful overlords. The consequences to the planet will be severe, and the war will escalate to a worldwide scope, and we will have the next world war unleash hell itself with nuclear bombs, adding to the leaking nuclear power plants all across the globe. This dire doomsday scenario is no better under a celebrity apprentice president who will fake being a dictator in front of the cameras while allowing the radical right to continue to destroy the future of all life on the planet for kickbacks they can get from the super wealthy to get reelected or hired after they are done ripping off the people in return for tax breaks, great giant subsidies, and continued huge budgets for the police, the NSA, the FBI, the DEA, and the weapons manufacturers and the Pentagon, CIA. The war in Syria will erupt across the globe and bring Iran to be the battleground that will destroy the world as it is and make the wealthy even richer by supplying both sides. Of course, there is always the chaos of war that leaves both sides drowning in blood and in the smoking toxic rubble. And soon to follow upon that war will be worldwide environmental disasters that will only increase every year as the waste and toxic mess grows and the planet continues to heat up. These are the realities of our world on the brink of total extinction by the end of this century. Is there any hope for the future at this point? Is there any hope for the future at this point? What about Jill Stein and the Green Party? What about the huge latent power of the progressives that showed up by the hundreds of thousands for Bernie Sanders, who was laughed at for decades in Congress before taking on the institution with his rebellion against the establishment? Like Bernie, Jill will be sidelined again by the corruption as the national election is stolen by the Democrat hypocrites, just as they did in the primaries. In fact, there might be too much rigging going on as both sides attack each other in a tug of war for control of the Congress and the presidency. There is light at the end of this long, dark tunnel. Who is not recognized in this circus of an election the rotted corpse of American liberty and the death of any sign of government of the people, by the people, and for the people? The progressive voices were dishonored and ignored again in favor of the corporate rulers. But everyone knows that now, without doubt. We are ruled by corrupt politicians who rig elections to make sure the wealthy continue to control our society for their own selfish interest. And they will stop at nothing to continue to hold back the progression of the human race, even if it means world war and ecological destruction. Will the rest of humanity sit back and let this happen? The progressive naivete has left them shocked and stunned by these terrible abuses, as now so many thousands have connected the bloody dots that run back to the 20th century roots of this uncivil class war. The assassinations of progressive voices for peace is a longer and longer list of martyrs for the cause of American and world freedom from the war machine and the sociopathic domination of corporate greed as the defining principle of humanity, instead of compassion and cooperation and appreciation of all people and all life on the planet. If our humanity is not evolving and expanding with the rest of the universe, we will increasingly be left behind, like the dinosaur. When we finally make the difficult choices to find peace and love instead of greed, war, and hate, we will see the true compassion and progression of the human race begin to restore the natural world and foster peace and love and friendship and respect to all other people and all other life in the world. We will be forced to institute a reform of all our institutions, end corporate rule, and return the governance of the people to the people. These terrible and obtuse abuses and corruptions will bring them down upon themselves, and the great compassion of America will renew the world economically, ecologically, and socially. We will end fossil fuel addiction, opiate addiction, alcohol addiction, nicotine addiction, and all other forms of addiction by creating a connected world that no longer prohibits our evolution with unjust laws and obsolete traditions and institutions. In this new age, we will not see earthly life as sinful and deny our natural or supernatural birthright as courageous and eternal spiritual adventurers sharing a thrilling and poignant human existence. How will this undoing happen? There are forces of consciousness at work that can uncover and transcend the tiny conceit that rules our world at this time. The larger consciousness of love and compassion will in time create the conditions for this transformation to occur as each one of us finds more and more opportunities to bring this evolution to transform our world. The situations will develop in such a way that beyond our human control, we will be forced to stop the degradation of the earth and our own human soul, to leave behind the selfishness and petty arrogance of rich white men that have ruled our world and held on to the elitist colonialism of the past centuries that have caused this unceasing genocide of life on planet Earth. Their power seems so strong right now, but they are destroying themselves with every petty lie and self-infatuated statement. They are showing the world their evil intent, and they will not stop until they destroy themselves and become more and more irrelevant to the emerging new age of cooperation over competition and management of life over eradication and fairness over exploitation. Bad ideas become worse as the future unfolds, and only the good can survive the march of decades. No matter how much they hope to hold it back, it is slipping away now more and more as the people wake up to their selfishness and greed at the expense of all other people and all life on the planet. Thank you. This is Lunge the Dinosaur. Let us not Go extinct.